Hey guys, this is Abhishek from gadgetsnews.com, and today we are going to do a quick hands-on comparison of these three devices which we have with us. We have the Motorola Moto E with us, we have the Lava Iris X1 and the Micromax Unite 2. So all these devices come in the price segment of 8,000 rupees at which they have been launched. This one has been launched for 6,999. The Canvas Unite 2 has been also launched for 6,999, whereas this device has been launched for 7,999. So in all these three devices come under the price segment of 8,000 rupees, and these are the major competitor devices in this particular price segment. We do have some other devices as well in this price segment, which includes the Nokia X and the Xperia E1 Dual, but those devices are not as of now over here because those devices does not have 1 GB of RAM, and which is something which does make a difference in the overall performance over the phone at this price point. So Motorola Moto E has 1 GB of RAM, which was the first phone to come with this price with 1 GB of RAM. Then we saw the Micromax Unite 2, which also has 1 GB of RAM, and then we have the Lava Iris X1, which has been recently launched, and this device also has the 1 GB of RAM. Talking about the hardware specifications of these three phones, this one has a Snapdragon 200 1.2 GHz dual core CPU, whereas this one has a 1.2 GHz quad core CPU, which is coming from Broadcom, not from MediaTek, whereas this device, the Micromax Unite 2, has a CPU of 1.3 GHz. It is a quad core CPU. So these two devices has a quad core CPU, this one has a dual core, but in terms of the overall performance and the kind of responsiveness and day-to-day usage, I would say all these three devices are equally good. So you can use all three devices with moderate usage. On day-to-day usage, they will not give you any kind of problem. The difference actually comes whenever you start playing some high definition games on these three devices, and that is where the major difference is actually there. If we talk about the Motorola Moto E, this device can actually play almost any kind of graphic intensive games, and again on the Micromax Unite 2 as well, we can actually play almost any kind of graphic intensive game. On this one, some of the games are kind of limited because you cannot install Modern Combat 4, which is kind of a heavy game, and again the limited storage is a problem on this device. Whereas if we talk about the Micromax Unite 2, Micromax Unite 2 does not have the problem of limited storage, although all these three devices have 4 GB of internal storage, but this device does not allow you to install application on the SD card, whereas this one does allow you to do that, and Lava Iris X1 also allows you to do that. So these two devices in terms of the overall storage is not a problem. Even with 4 GB of internal storage, you get around 1.6 GB available on this device, and you have around 1.67 GB available on this device. So in terms of the storage, they are again going to be less on the storage department. In out of 4 GB, only 1.67 GB is actually available to the user, but again these two devices does offer you the functionality of installing applications and games to the SD card, so which is actually a good thing. That means you can actually use SD card on these two devices as an external storage device, whereas on this device external SD card is supported, but you cannot actually install applications on the SD card, but you can move certain applications from the phone memory to the SD card. So talking about these three devices in terms of the build quality, I would like to show you the build quality material which has been used at the back side. The front is again glass on all these three phones, but if we take a look over the back side, we can see that a good quality of plastic rubber finished matte finish rubberized back cover has been used on the Moto E, which again is quite good in terms of the material which has been used. It is a good quality of plastic which has been used. It is quite tight. The overall build and finish is pretty good. You can easily hold this device in the hand, and again it does feel quite solid when you hold in hand. When we talk about this device is again made up of plastic. On the edges you have plastic, on the front as well. On the front we have glass, and again on the back side we have flimsy, or you can say very thin quality of plastic which has been used. So again in terms of the build quality, it is not that great if I compare it with the Moto E. If I talk about the Micromax Unite 2, Micromax Unite 2 has again got a plastic back cover which is again made up of thin quality of plastic. So in terms of build quality, something which I can say about these two devices is that these two devices actually come very close to each other in terms of the build quality, whereas the Motorola Moto E is slightly better than these two in terms of the build quality. But again, if I compare these two in terms of build quality, I can say that the overall feel of this device is not that great. This is again looking like a plastic device. Again, this is lighter than both of these two, in terms of weight this one is the lightest one, but again it does not feel very solid when you hold this device in hand. Whereas on the Micromax Unite 2, if I actually compare this device with the Lava Iris X1, I can say that this device is slightly stronger and again slightly better built as compared to the Lava Iris X1 overall. So let's start the quick comparison between all these three devices. We are going to compare these devices on the basis of display size, on the basis of display quality, the viewing angles they have, what kind of performance they have, what kind of benchmark figures they have, and what kind of camera performance they have, and the overall usage as well as the battery backup. So we are going to compare these devices in detail around all the specs. So let's start this comparison now. Now comparing the Lava Iris X1 with the Moto E and with the Micromax Unite 2, as you can see, this device has a medium level display size. This one has a 4.3-inch display with a QHD resolution which is 540x960, which will give you a pixel density of around 256 pixels per inch, which makes the display much better and crisp on this device, and the viewing angles are also pretty good. When we talk about this device has got a 4.5-inch display, which is again an IPS panel, and this device does give you pretty good pixel density. It is around 218 pixels per inch which you will get on this 4.5-inch display. It has got a 480x854 FWVG resolution. When it comes to the Micromax Unite 2, this device has the highest display size, and this device is having a display of 4.7-inch, and it has a display resolution of 480x800, which is the lowest out of all these three. So the pixel density is the less as compared to the Moto E, and also as compared to the Lava Iris X1. This one will give you around 199 pixels per inch. This display is again pretty okay, but not that great as the display which we have on Moto E. And if we compare it with the Lava Iris X1, the display is slightly, you can say, pixelated. If you compare both of these two phones side by side, you can feel that the text is slightly more sharper on the Lava Iris X1 as compared to the text which we see on the Micromax Unite 2. So in terms of display size, this one is definitely the better device in case display size is something which matters to you. In terms of pixel density, this is the best device which you should select out of these three. Now talking about the camera which we have on the Lava Iris X1, we have an 8-megapixel camera with a dual LED flash, and it is an autofocus camera, whereas the camera which we have on the Micromax Unite 2, it is a 5-megapixel camera with single LED flash, and it is an autofocus camera. Both of these cameras on these two devices can record high definition video. They do have LED flash. This one has dual LED flash, this one has single LED flash. Both of them can also record high definition videos at 1080p as well as at 720p. So this is supported on these two devices. As far as the camera which we have on the Motorola Moto E, this is going to be the weakest part of Moto E. As compared to these two devices, the Moto E actually has a much better build quality. So in terms of build quality, if I would like to rate these devices, this is having the best build quality, this is also having a pretty good build quality, and this one is also having a decent build quality, I would say. So in terms of ranking, I would like to rate 1 to Moto E. Second position will be taken by the Micromax Unite 2, and the third position on the basis of build quality, I would like to give this one, because this one feels very much plastic, and again it is kind of light in terms of the weight if I compare it with the Micromax Unite 2, or even if I compare with the Moto E. Moto E feels slightly heavier to hold in one hand, but again this also feels quite strong to hold in hand as well. Although this one is also pretty okay in terms of the strongness and the build quality, but if you hold the Lava Iris X1, this one is again good enough, but in terms of build quality you can actually feel the plastic much more. It has a plastic back cover which is made up of very thin quality of plastic. The overall build quality of the phone is good enough. Even if you drop this phone accidentally from waist height, nothing will happen to the phone, but still it does not feel that good as the kind of feeling you get on Moto E or even on Micromax Unite 2. In terms of build quality, I would say this device is going to come on the third position because of the kind of material which has been used. Thickness is something which is kind of high on the Lava Iris X1 because the thickness of this device is around 8.9 millimeter, whereas this device is slightly thinner than the Lava Iris X1. If you compare it from the edges, as you can see, the Micromax Unite 2 is slightly thinner. It feels like a little bit heavier device, but on the other hand, it also feels like strong in terms of build quality as compared to the Lava Iris X1. As far as the overall form factor of this device is concerned, this device is having a 4.5-inch display, which is again not a very big display, not a very small display. This is still better than the Moto E display, which is kind of smaller if you compare it with the Lava Iris X1. But again, the display on this device is slightly better in terms of pixel density, in terms of display resolution it is better, and in terms of the display quality as well. This device has a slightly better display with pretty good viewing angles as compared to the Lava Iris X1, which is also good, but again the display is not that great as you see on the Moto E. But still, saying all this, I would like to say that this device has a pretty good form factor. When you hold this device in one hand, you can easily use this display with one hand without any issues. You can reach every part of the screen with one hand, and the one-handed usage of this device is as good as you have on the Moto E, which is again a pretty good phone. As far as the overall grip of the phone is concerned, this device is having a flat matte finish back cover, which is again going to give you a pretty good grip when you hold this device in one hand. But again, you will get a better grip when you hold the Motorola Moto E in your hand, which is having a curved matte finish back cover with a rubberized feel to it, which will give you a slightly better grip. On the other hand, if I compare the Lava Iris X1 with the Micromax Unite 2, Micromax Unite 2 is slightly heavier in terms of the weight as compared to Lava Iris X1, and the overall feel of the device is also not that great. This device actually feels very light to hold in hand. It is a much better device to use it with one hand, whereas this device has a little bit bigger display. Although it is not too big, this one is having a 4.7-inch display, whereas this one is having a 4.5-inch display. The pixel density is slightly better on the Lava Iris X1 if you actually take a closer look as compared to the pixel density which you get on the Micromax Unite 2, but still it is pretty good, I would say. Unless you are reading a document with large amount of text, you will not notice pixelation on any of these two devices. But still, in terms of the overall form factor and the overall feel of the device, this one is much lighter to hold in one hand and much easier as well to use with one hand as compared to the Micromax Unite 2. Now we are going to take a look over the camera on the Lava Iris X1. As far as the camera interface is concerned, the camera interface is again stock Android. There is no optimization which has been done on the camera UI. It does have autofocus, and tap to focus is also there, so you can actually do a tap on the screen to focus on specific object. You can take a photo after that. So I'm going to take this photo right now from the Lava Iris X1, and I'm going to take two photos of this particular box which is there in the front. One with light, one without light. So this one is going to be taken with light, and let me just turn off the light and let me just take this photo again. So it does take slight amount of time more, especially whenever you are taking a photo of the same box without light. So I'm just turning on the light again so that you can see it. So this is how the overall photo clarity will look like. Again, in terms of details, the photo clarity is good enough. It does take some time to render, but the amount of clarity which I can see in this photo is pretty good. The camera is performing pretty well, I would say, in terms of the overall performance. And with light, if we can show this photo to you again, this one has been taken with light. So this one has been taken with light, and this one is slightly better, I would say, in terms of details as compared to the last one which we have seen. And this one is also good in terms of color production. We can compare it with the original object over there, and this is actually the kind of natural color production which I'm seeing on this device, which is good. Let's compare this device in terms of camera quality with the Micromax Unite 2, and let me just take the same photo of the same object over there with the 5-megapixel camera on Unite 2. So let's see how does the photo actually come out on this device when we take a photo of the same object. So we have taken the photo with the Micromax Unite 2. As far as the camera of the Moto E is concerned, Moto E is having a fixed focus camera, unlike the autofocus camera which we have on the Iris X1, which is having the highest camera of 8 megapixel, this one having a 5 megapixel camera, and this one is also having a 5 megapixel camera, but it is a fixed focus camera, so the clarity is something which I am not expecting much on the Moto E at least. So we have the photo over here as you can see, and this photo is not at all looking good. I would say not good in terms of color production and very bad in terms of the details are not at all visible. Whereas if we compare this photo of the Lava Iris X1, which should be compared with this device, the Micromax Unite 2, as you can see, this device is having a pretty good clarity, I would say, in terms of the details it has captured. This device is also having a pretty good clarity in terms of the details it has captured. But again, I would like to say that the overall color production is slightly better on the Lava Iris X1 in comparison to the Micromax Unite 2 as far as the picture quality is concerned. Again, amount of details which I can see in both of these photos is pretty good. That is something where both of these cameras have performed well. But again, I would say the details are slightly better on the Micromax Unite 2. Now if we can compare both of these devices very closely, as you can see, the Airtel is kind of blur over here on the Lava Iris X1, whereas it is kind of clear over here and much more readable on the Unite 2. So again, Unite 2 camera is better in terms of capturing details, especially in macro shots. In long shots, both of them will perform almost the same, but this device is doing a better job in terms of color production. Now here we have the hardware configuration for the phone. The model number is Iris X1. It has got an ARM V7 processor clocked at 1.2 GHz. It is a quad-core CPU, and again the chipset is not mentioned as far as the hardware is concerned. When we take a look over here on the display resolution, it is having a display resolution of 418 to 854. You have a Video Core 4 hardware GPU on this device, and it is OpenGL ES 2.0. When we take a look over the sensors, we have limited set of sensors on this device, which includes a 3-axis accelerometer sensor, light sensor and proximity sensor. These are the same kind of sensor which we have seen on Moto E if we compare the Moto E as of now in terms of sensors with this device, whereas the Micromax Unite 2 is having a largest number of sensor out of all these three devices. The Micromax Unite 2 does have a magnetic field sensor as well, whereas the magnetic field sensor is missing on these two devices. But that does not mean that you cannot use navigation on the Moto E or on Lava Iris X1. You can use that. And again, over here, if we take a look over the sensors, we have accelerometer sensor, light sensor and proximity sensor, whereas if we take a look over the Micromax Unite 2, I can show you the system information over here, and this device in terms of sensors is higher as compared to these two devices, which just has these three top sensors, whereas this device has an orientation and a magnetometer sensor as well. The score which we have gotten quadrant standard for this device is 3012, which is lower than the score which we have seen on the Micromax Unite 2, and again slightly on the same lines which the score which we have seen on the Moto E. So in terms of score, if we take a look over the detailed score of this device, the CPU is 8450, memory is 1376, input output operation is 2176, 2D is 324, 3D is 2376. Again, the overall score of this device is not that great, but the overall day-to-day usage which I have done with this device, I can say that this device is pretty good for day-to-day usage. The score on Antutu which we have got for this device is 9907, which is again lesser than the score which we have seen on the Micromax Unite 2. I can show you the score for the Antutu on the Unite 2. This device has given a score of 16709, whereas the Lava Iris X1 has got a score of 9907. And if we compare the score with the Motorola Moto E, I can show you the score of Antutu for the Moto E as well. And over here, again we installed this application. Okay, so we have the score for the Moto E as well. In terms of the score, if I actually compare these three devices, this one is lowest in terms of the score which we have seen, but in day-to-day usage all three devices are good enough to be used. When it comes to multitouch, this device supports 2-point multitouch. When we compare it with the Unite 2, we can say that this device on the other hand supports 2-point multi-touch again. So these two devices support 2-point multi-touch. If we compare it with the Moto E, on the Moto E we have 5-point multi-touch which is supported on this device. I do not have this application as of now, I guess. Okay, I have this application over here, and on the Moto E you have 5-point multi-touch, on Lava Iris X1 you have 2-point, and on the Canvas Unite 2 you also have 2-point multi-touch. One thing I would like to highlight over here is that if we compare these three devices, the kind of display quality you have, the best display quality is going to be this device. The viewing angles are going to be better on this one, whereas viewing angles are slightly better on this one as well if I compare. So at certain viewing angles the Moto E is not that great if you see the screen, whereas the Lava Iris X1 is slightly better in terms of viewing angles as compared to Moto E at times. But in terms of the overall display resolution, this one is definitely higher, which is 540x960 with higher pixel density, more precise and crisp display. This one is also a decent display, which is again giving you a pixel density of around 218 pixels per inch on this 4.5 inch display. The worst display out of these three devices is going to be on the Unite 2, which is having a 4.7 inch display, again larger than the Moto E 4.3 inch, larger than the Lava Iris X1 which is 4.5 inch, but this device has the worst viewing angles, I would say, as compared to these two only. But still you can see the display from extreme angles. But this device also have an IPS panel, but the viewing angles are not good, and again the color protection of this device is also not that great, because the color protection is best on this one. You have the second best color protection on this one, but when it comes to the pixel density as well, the pixel density is again kind of less on this one, which is around 199 pixels per inch, whereas you have a better pixel density on this one and second best pixel density on the Lava Iris X1. The score on Ninamark which we have got on this device is 48.3 FPS, which is again a decent score. I'm going to test the overall gaming performance of this device. I'm going to play some games in front of you and also going to give you my view. If I compare this score as of now only on the basis of score, we can see that the score which we have seen on Moto E is 47.6 FPS, which is again kind of closer to this one in terms of the Ninamark score, and this device has the best Ninamark score. Again, I have played heavy games, graphic intensive game, casual games, all those kind of games have actually run quite perfectly fine and smoothly on this device as compared to the Moto E. And now we are going to compare the overall performance with the Lava Iris X1. So let's start playing some game and I can show you the performance after that. One thing which I do not like about this device is the display. The display is kind of fingerprint catchy. As you can see, you can easily notice some fingerprints on the display after some time of usage, and which is something which I do not like much. Same happens with the Micromax Unite 2 as well. This display is also kind of fingerprint catchy. You can easily see the fingerprints on this one as well, whereas the Motorola Moto E is something which is best in this department because it is not very much fingerprint catchy. You will not notice the fingerprints on this display as compared to these two devices which are kind of fingerprint catchy. On the RAM department, this device has 1 GB of RAM, just like the 1 GB RAM which we have seen on the Micromax Unite 2 and the 1 GB RAM which we have seen on the Moto E as well. If we take a look over the free amount of RAM which we get on this device, we have around 350 MB of RAM free on this device. If I compare right now with the current scenario on the Moto E, which is actually running some applications in the background, so still I can show you the RAM scenario for the Moto E and the amount of free RAM which is available on this one. So on this device, out of 1 GB you get around 343 MB of RAM which is free. On this one it was 358 MB of 358 MB of RAM which is free, which is slightly higher than the Moto E. And if I compare it with the Micromax Unite 2, I can show you the free amount of RAM on this device as well, and this one should be higher, but I am not sure about it. But let's take a look. So this device will give you the highest amount of RAM out of these two. You will get around 579 MB of RAM which is free. So even when you run some applications in the background, still it will give you around 400 MB of RAM which is going to be free as compared to these two devices. Again, if we actually convert this into the UI response and the kind of responsiveness which you will get, the responsiveness of the UI is much better on this device because the UI is very much customized to work with the kind of hardware it has. Whereas if we compare these two devices, this is going to be a close competition. In this case, the UI is slightly more responsive on the Micromax Unite 2, even when this device has a display resolution which is almost the same as this one, but still the amount of customization which has been done as far as the UI is concerned with the hardware on this device is slightly better. So this device will give you a more responsive UI if you compare it with the Lava Iris X1, whereas the Moto E is going to be on the top in terms of the UI response. With this much amount of free RAM, around 358 MB of RAM is there, around 500 MB of RAM is there, this device is slightly more responsive as compared to Lava Iris X1.